You're listening to A Deeper Dive, a part of the Winsight Podcast Network.
How do you dust off a brand that's been dead for 15 years? Hello, this is Jonathan Mays, editor-in-chief of Restaurant Business. And in this week's episode of A Deeper Dive, I speak with Paul Mangiamele, the owner of legendary restaurant brands, which owns Bennigan's and apparently Steak 'n Dale. The two brands' owner filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in 2008. The Bennigan's franchise was rescued at the last minute from shutting down, and Paul later bought the chain and has operated ever since. But Steak 'n Dale shut down and hasn't been heard of since. But recently, Paul's company announced plans to open one in the Minneapolis suburb of Burnsville. And so I had to get him on the podcast to talk about it. So we talk about how you bring a brand back from the dead after 15 years and how rare that is. We also talk about why he thinks Steak 'n Ale can work and what is being done to make the brand relevant to a modern audience. So we're talking Steak 'n Ale on A Deeper Dive, so please have a listen. All right, I am here with Paul Mangiamele. Paul, welcome to the podcast.
Pleasure to be here with you, my friend.
All right, so I hear you're about to open Steak 'n Ale here in a few months. Is that true?
The rumor is not only true and accurate, but it's been well received not only in Minneapolis but around the country and, for that matter, around the world.
Yeah, I'm really glad that's true because otherwise the story we wrote on it would be bad. So, I would like you to start this entire, let's go back, way back for years. You just tell us the story about how you came to take over Bennigan's and the Steak 'n Ale name.
Okay, well, it's a great story, and I'll try to hit the highlights. It was back in 2011 that I came on board. Just a few years after the Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which I keep getting reminded of repeatedly. And instead of talking about thriving and surviving and opening restaurants and preserving the iconic nature of these brands, I keep hearing about this bankruptcy that happened so many years ago. It had nothing to do with the brand. It just had a lot to do with mismanagement of it. But I came on the scene around 2011. And I surveyed it was only Bennigan's at the time, and I surveyed the Bennigan's and saw what a beautiful diamond Bennigan's was. Again, just being mismanaged. With a lot of dirt on it, a lot of mud, and all it had to do was get back to preserving the culture and then reconnecting emotional connections. However, during that time, I also negotiated a management buyout, and I completed that in 2015. So in 2015, with the help of my wife, myself, we purchased 100% of all the intellectual property and the franchising companies and all the entities that went with it, and then got busy and as you know, opened up Bennigan's on the fly for non-traditional venues, as well as during the pandemic, we used it for host kitchens and ghost kitchen delivery. And always had the Steak 'n Ale intellectual property. So I thought, I always loved it. I always thought that Norman Brinker, who was actually a friend of mine, never worked for the guy, but we met on several occasions and we hit it off famously. And I think he's looking down with a big smile saying that I ended up with the only two brands he ever created, which I thought was pretty cool. But with Steak 'n Ale, look, it was the bridge way back in 1966 between fast food and fine dining. There really, at that point, was nothing. Certainly not a salad bar as well, or family friendly, or very affordable. And so I thought, boy, you know what? We have a regenerative moment right now where we can not only bring back Steak 'n Ale, which is such an iconic brand, but also reattach those emotional connections. And I think you've read on some of the articles that I said, am I the only guy drinking the Kool-Aid, or that my team and I, we became incestuous with our protection of the brand. And so I said, okay, let's start a Facebook page and see if anybody salutes it. 53,000 people are rooting for a brand that doesn't exist anymore, which I think communicates the right message. There's a lot of pent-up demand. There's a lot of emotional pieces to this. And it spurred us to continue to work on the redevelopment. Now, you got to know that although we have some of the archival information, we had to basically recreate the whole thing for 21st century. So not only from a physical plant, but to the menu, to the layout, to the reintroduction of the salad bar. And then what else can we do to bring something called, which is sorely missing today in casual dining and some other concepts, flair, energy, fun, vibe. Here's a good one: value proposition. And so we brought that back in the guise of a franchise vehicle. And I've talked to a lot of people, but even though I get beat up for not introducing it sooner, I had to be deliberate. I had to be hopefully a little bit intelligent in terms of who I'm going to partner with to reintroduce it. And so Roy Arnold came on the scene, and he's a Marine colonel, retired, very experienced hotelier, and he and I hit it off, as I have a military background as well. And so we talked the same language. I told him about my vision for Steak and Ale, and here we go. We're opening up in Burnsville. That is the abridged version. Although I could write another book about it.
So you have a salad bar.
Yes.
Bringing back to salad bar, will you be playing 80s music?
Yep, we're going. Salad bar's coming. The honey bread's coming back. The club is coming back. The Hawaiian chicken is coming back. But we're also going to do tableside salad. We're going to do a tableside. When's the last time you saw tableside anywhere? We're doing Irish coffee tableside. And so from a brand standpoint in casual dining, I'm bringing back things that, really delivered a message, really delivered value to the brands that, again, were created in 1966 for Steak and Ale, 1976 for Bennigan's. There's a resiliency with this brand that has lasted all these decades. And I'm really proud of being able to bring it back with my team and our franchise partners that have done a phenomenal job through some tough years right now. I don't think it's ever been tough. I kiddingly say that we have earned our PhD. So the PhD is pandemic. The H is headwinds. It's high interest. It's high inflation. And then the D is the disruptive nature that has entered our industry and many other industries over the last 2-3 years now. Never has it been tougher, but never has there been a creation of a demand for being able to execute. You and I have, kind of a cryptic view sometimes of our industry. And it's interesting that, there's so many, I know there's like 30 new CEOs and all a lot of these different concepts today. And very few of the CEOs actually put their money up. Very few of those CEOs actually put themselves at risk. And we put all our money on the win line for these brands. But not only that, the first rule that, the first new initiative they come up with usually is, we're going back to basics. Whoever told you to leave them in the first place? And so from an execution standpoint, from a delivery of a value proposition, for flair, for energy, for preserving the culture that has existed all these decades, that has been our mission and will be exemplified in our Steak and Ale, which is probably just a couple of miles away from your home.
Yeah. It's about like a 30 to 40 minute drive, depending on the traffic. But, all right. So, but it's been 15 years. It was that chapter 7 that you brought forth, which by the way, was an incredibly, that doesn't happen very often. You don't see, brands don't just get like wholeheartedly wiped off the map like Steak and Ale was. That is exceedingly rare.
Yeah.
And it's been 15 years since that brand has been. Is it? Have you gotten any indication besides of the Facebook group that there is interest in this, in enough interest in this concept that's going to be able to fuel a comeback after that long?
Yeah. Well, as I referred back before, I regard these brands as diamonds. Because they've always had appeal. They've always had brought a smile to their face. Everybody has a story. A lot of folks kind of worked their way through the ranks, starting at Steak and Ale, specifically in the casual dining segment, or Bennigan's. Norm created a very good team of leadership. And again, the culture piece is very important. And I say all the time that if you have people, passion, and culture and commitment, it will be strategy and tactics every day of the week. I mean, you see a lot of people talk about the quantitative pieces and the qualitative pieces of the business. Well, that's just the ante to get in. Everybody has to have good food. Everybody has to have good service. And if you don't, you're going to go out of business. But to overcome the taint of the Chapter 7, I think that we had to get rid of the 47 microwaves that were in the restaurants. There are a lot of, through the bankruptcy, a lot of operators bought them for pennies on the dollar, and they were horrible operators. And so when I came in, I actually had to subtract before I could add, because I had to get rid of the people that were not passionate about the brand, would not execute, would do everything in the cheap, and then bastardize the brands themselves. And so had to clean that up, and that took a couple of years, and then reintroduce the new version, a franchise model version, where you actually are in danger of getting compelling returns on your investment. And so I took 10,000 feet, because before, as you know, Jonathan, it was a real estate play more than anything else. They would build a Bennigan's and a steak and ale on 3-4 acres. They would own the underlying real estate. They went through tremendous sale leaseback kind of programs back then. And then they made the decision to do the Chapter 7, which was one of their options. But again, like you said, it's not a reorganization. It's game over. It's a liquidation. And so to rebuild it after all of that, when I saw the potential of the brands, the team, like my senior vice president of operations, Sean Finn, been with Bennigan's 36 years. So the intellectual capital that we represent from a support team standpoint, we're 100% franchise. And I understand, I was a franchisee myself, so I understand the dynamic to support and to train and to communicate and to collaborate and to participate with our franchise partners, not only here in the U.S., but around the world. And so now we're all about, preserving a legacy, building on the Bennigan's franchise model, the new steak and ale model, which I think will be hugely successful in Burnsville. Very, very high AUV. I think it'd be a perfect franchise model to replicate. Roy Arnold and I did over a 15-store deal ourselves just for the Midwest. There's areas of the country now, Jonathan, you've seen it. I won't even go. There's no reason for us to go to California, as an example. Love the state, love the people, but the politics are so onerous for a small business. I'm not talking about the big brands that have thousands upon thousands of units. I'm talking about the independents, the chef-run type of units, restaurants where when you have to pay the 16-year-old pimple-faced kid to bus tables $20 an hour, it really cuts into your profit margins. And so I'm looking to, where is it franchise friendly? Where is it business friendly? Like in Texas and Florida, we're focusing on now, where there no state income tax. And so with our model intact, our franchise model intact, there's an opportunity to create a lot of wealth through the franchising vehicle for the brands now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're gonna essentially ignore California, which is sort of like 12% of the nation's GDP.
Yeah, well, but small business is 65% of the GDP, and there's been a lot of legislature that actually prohibits growth, and it has presented some of these headwinds that I talked about. So from California, I'm just going to put it on the side for now. Same thing with in Oregon. Of course, if there is a huge franchisee that already has an infrastructure built, that already has a lot of restaurants going where they're making money, and we can see how the whole dynamic works out with how the different pieces of opposition, whether it be a labor or it's permitting or it's building, high costs all the way around. Once we see how that whole shakes out over the next couple of years, I'll be glad to consider California and Washington and Oregon and the New Yorks and the Connecticut's and the New Jerseys, because the numbers have to make sense. I am not going to consciously sign a franchise agreement if I feel in my heart of hearts I don't think the franchisee will make it. Mm-hmm. Doesn't make any sense. It's a recipe for disaster. And again, it's a brand that we own. And I'm not trying to add units and take the initial fee and then go to the next stop as a CEO and do the same thing. I'm not doing that. I've put my lock and stock, my heart and my soul, and my hard-earned money since I was a kid on the win line for these brands. So so I think that makes a statement in terms of credibility. I'm standing side by side with the people that invest in the brands, and that's a big point of differentiation with a lot of the other brands that are out there right now. But with I'm just putting it on hold. I mean, just with Texas alone, there's another 100, 200 restaurants that we could build. Same thing in Florida, and other states that we're already in, from the Midwest down. And so I'm going to focus on that first. And again, the mantra is really about to preserve the culture, grow intelligently, grow deliberately, and then restore the integrity back to the brands that they always had in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not to get on the California thing, but just to spend a second, and while I definitely have considerable concerns about a lot of the regulations in California, I want to point out that over the past week, there were two stories. One of which is a Wendy's franchisee this week that filed for bankruptcy.
Read that, yeah.
Yeah, that franchisee is based in Florida. Last week, there was a Wingstop franchisee that was acquired for what we believe might be, and there's no real way to check this out, but what might be a record multiple. That franchisee is in California. My suspicion on this is that the restaurant industry tends to be far more resilient than people think. They probably are going to adjust. Will they have to pay higher? Will prices go up? Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
But they said to somebody this week, you know what? If people in California do not want to pay higher prices for their chicken wings or for their steak, then they would not support people that have those sorts of regulations. But right. You get the government you deserve. But the point is that the industry tends to be more resilient on these sorts of things than people think. And that is just a very big difference. Investors in that Wingstop brand, which is in California and apparently is doing very well, literally do not care about the California Fast Act. That is a very worth noticeable. Anyway, I want to get back to the steak and ale thing and not get distracted by California.
Right.
First of all, the Bennigans, we forget about the Bennigans thing, which, that chapter 7 almost killed Bennigan's as well. If I recall correctly, there was a company-owned operation, but then they had the franchise operation, and the secured lender basically went in and wholeheartedly replaced the whole board. If we recall correctly, that is probably the most dramatic bankruptcy filing I can ever recall covering in this business, because they basically padlocked the doors, and workers showed up one day across the country and suddenly all these Bennigans were closed, which is tough I can imagine for the brand, as you mentioned early on, that you keep getting reminded of this. But Bennigan's was almost killed in that process, had the secured lender not the night before that thing got that all happened, if the secured lender didn't come in and take the franchise business away. And then you would have had to be trying to resurrect your second brand rather than just try to fix it.
No, that's absolutely right. In fact, there are so many people, Jonathan, that they say that in the interview, do you know that no brand ever has come back from Chapter 7? And the naysayers that Bennigan's is dead, steak and ale are dead. And I let them talk. Of course, they have the right. They have the right to express their opinion. But I never, my wife, myself, my team, my franchise partners, obviously, we will never be held prisoner by people that are quick to judge without thinking through the iconic nature of the brands. I mean, again, when I did my due diligence before taking over the position, I saw that the AUVs for for Bennigan's through the franchise organization was still very high. The restaurants that closed on the Chapter 7 were corporate stores, obviously, and they were doing $3, $4, $5 million then on not all of them, but some of the the top 10, 20%. And so I saw, well, so why do you close restaurants that are capable of generating these kind of AUVs. Again, separate agenda. I don't even want to spend time with it because it's neither here nor there at this point. It's like, how do you move forward? How do you deal with the negative Nellies, the naysayers out there? And I said to him at the time, I had a couple of great words, but I said, watch us. And so here it is, 30 years later, Jonathan, where I've seen a lot of hot concepts come and go. I've seen a lot of brands go sideways. I've seen in all categories. And here we are still standing and growing. So I think I try to emphasize is we not only survived the Chapter 7, we're thriving. Next year, for an example, in addition to the steak and ale, we have another 10 restaurants in queue, be it Bennigan's on the Fly, be it Bennigan's, be it steak and ale. And as a percentage, I know you love metrics. As a percentage, that's pretty goddamn good. Growth. Oh, I probably shouldn't have said that, but it's probably doggone good for when you take a look at the percentage of growth that we're going to enjoy. And again, I've been because of the investment that we've all made, because I want to preserve the culture and the iconic nature of these brands. I'm being very slow. I mean, I got lampooned for why does it take so long to open up a steak and ale? It's because, well, if you thought it was easy, get into the business. And when I started this, it only got harder. And so when you want to build a new building now, it's at least 40 or 50% higher now from a construction standpoint, because the labor, the materials, the equipment, everything is increased, as well as, you look at, back to the PhD, the disruption from the supply chain is just now starting to become a little bit normalized. But the normalization isn't back to where it used to be from a price standpoint. It's just that the price increases have lessened on a quarter-to-quarter basis now. So we're still fighting the good fight. We're still trying to keep our metrics in the proper order so that we can still generate a unit level profitability from a franchise standpoint that makes sense, so you can create worth. And then the legendary restaurant brand consortium is where we can go into, like what we're doing with Roy, we can go into a Minnesota, as an example, and open Bennigan's on the Fly, open up the full-scale Bennigan's, open up the steak and ales, and it's all about, as you know, market share capture. So if we can take that market share and then create that revenue stream for our franchise groups, be it in any state, then I think we're on to something good. And again, I don't want to be all things to all people. We're a scratch kitchen. We make things with love and care. And in fact, you'll love this, the Monte Cristo. I've changed the name to the world famous Monte Cristo because nobody can duplicate it. And there's secrets to that. And now I trademarked it. And so we have trademarks like Oh Baby Back Ribs, the world famous Monte Cristo, our broccoli bites, our Death by Chocolate. These are not just menu items. These are trademark menu items that are known throughout the country. So again, reattaching that emotional connection, driving the demand for the brands. I got people that used to work for Steak and Ale that are having a reunion. They say, Paul, forget about it. We're renting a bus. We're coming to the opening. And I said, well, bring your old uniform because I'm going to put you to work first. So we're going to have some fun with all this. I might invite everybody to help me open, because there's such a fun aspect to these brands that I just don't see in other brands sometimes. They became dull. There's no fun. There's no energy. There's no vibe. And we're trying to create that through the flair and the table side. But just the fact that we're bringing back this phenomenal steak and ale brand has garnered a lot of support. It got you to give me a call.
Yeah, I did. You are on the podcast. So what are you doing to make steak and ale relevant to today? You said that you were making some changes to the brand to make it relevant to today's consumer because, things have changed in 15 years. Yeah,
well, and the flavor profiles have changed some. Mm-hmm. So the recipes, how do you take, I did the same thing with Bennigan's and work with a lot of chefs. And in fact, one of them is right there in Minnesota, where how do you take a great recipe and make it better? How do you make it legendary? So we're working with different flavor infusions, different recipe infusions. But like I said, we're also making everything from scratch. And so the same thing we're looking at speakeasy kind of beverages. So it's the classic cocktails. It's a classic martini. It's a classic old fashioned, and we're thinking it through not only from a recipe standpoint, but a presentation standpoint with regard to our the different glassware that we're using, the garnishes that we're using. It's going to be fun and different. And so, from a standpoint of being relevant, I think because there's such a dearth of fun and vibe and activity, bringing that into, and we did the same thing with Bennigan's, bringing those components into the operation attracts the other demographics, and is able to build on not only the pent up demand but new trial. And so again, like I said, I think the steak and ale in Minneapolis, because we're not just doing lunch and dinner. We'll do brunch on Sundays. We'll do room service because it's in the new named Wyndham, and we'll also do delivery. So we're going to look at having a lot of the plates spinning in terms of how do we drive revenue so that the unit economics and the unit level profitability are very strong.
Mm-hmm. So it's not going to look like, what did those old steak and ales look like? They kind of had this really weird, or they look like sort of like a German ale house, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, very compartmentalized. But people forget in 1966 you could do something that is forbidden today, which is smoke. And so a lot of the sections were closed off. And that's why when smoking became banned everywhere, the open kitchen, the open dining rooms became a little bit more in vogue because you didn't have to split everything off anymore like you used to have to. But I wanted to make it still intimate without having it compartmentalized. So it's still kind of an open floor plan, but we'll have a fireplace. We'll have a very, very intimate bar. We'll have, nice patio. And even we've even thought through the music to create that vibe, like what we did in Bennigan's. We have 60s, 70s, 80s music, as well as the current music, so we can create that energy depending on day part. And so it's very well thought out. I would love to say very scientific, but I'm not going to say that we're scientists. But I think it will appeal to the masses, and I think people are looking for something a little different, a little bit more fun. And of course, we will never stray from the value proposition, which I think is strongest in the country. I've seen so many different brands now, and you and I both know them. Where you want a hamburger? Well, that's $22. This is casual dining. Oh, you want fries? Well, that's another, depending on the brand, $5 to $7. I think that's ridiculous. I think it's you need to have the right portions at the right price. Our hamburger includes the French fries. I'm not going into an a la carte. We love to bundle it all up so that the value proposition is very strong all by itself. And so again, the combination of all these things, I think will build not only the trial, but the sales level that will not only be attractive to the consumer, but it will be attractive to the franchise potential candidate as well. I've been saying this a long time, and I think you'll agree with me. Because you always read the doom and gloom in casual dining. Casual dining's dead. Well, you know what? Casual dining gave up on casual dining. The consumer, the guest, they never gave up on it. They want a social outlet. They want to go to a bar. They want to have a couple of drinks. They want a good meal. They want great service. They don't want their server texting back their friend or doing TikTok while they're taking the order. I don't know where everything got so lax, and don't tell me because labor is so hard to find. I think good team members are gravitated to what I call benign dictatorship. If you have rules and leadership, and you train people and you treat them well, and you pay them well, and you reward them, and you talk to them, you communicate, people will stay. I mean, look at my team. I mean, I haven't heard of too many people that are in organizations where there's 30 and 20 years of tenure. That's unheard of. People it's a revolving door. I just read it the other day where I think it's something like 35 new CEOs this year alone. It's not the leader. It's the culture. It was ruined somehow. And so I think that by preserving that and then having that evidence by our brand and execution, that we'll eke out enough of the market share in enough states and enough countries to have those brands, that legendary restaurant brands that will operate with integrity, not just for now, But the legacy that Norm created, listen, I'm aware I'm standing on his shoulders, will perpetuate itself.
Paul, this was great. Really appreciate you joining me on the podcast this week.
We must be going over the half hour.
Thank you.
Listen, Jonathan, great. And you got a personal invitation from me to you. Again, bring clothes that you don't mind getting dirty from busting tables.
And that should do it for this week's episode of A Deeper Dive, which was edited, as always, by Spoons. Artwork by Nico Hines. You may find this and other episodes of the podcast on our website at www.restaurantbusinessonline.com/article/deeper-dive. And please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'm Jonathan Mays, your host, podcast producer, and the editor-in-chief of Restaurant Business. Thank you for listening.